Audio check. Audio check. Audio check. Audio check. Checking the audio. Audio check. One, two.
Hold on a second, hold on.
Good, David? Tammy, you ready?
1 sec, Mayor.
Evening. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Father Reggie with St. Aidan's Episcopal Church, who will lead us in our invocation.
Good evening. Before I start the invocation, you should have before you council invitations to the grand reopening of St. Aidan's on next Friday night. All of you, including the entire city, we would love to see you all come out. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless this city with honorable industry, sound learning, pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties, and fashion into one united people the multitudes, brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endue with thy spirit of wisdom those to whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that, through obedience to thy law, we may show forth thy praise amongst the cities of this nation. In the time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness. In the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail. All of this we ask now, through our Lord and Savior Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, August 2nd, 2021 to order. The city strongly recommends that you review tonight's agenda carefully. And if you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, then please bring your comment cards to the clerk as soon as possible, to my right. While the Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment cards up until the clerk calls the agenda item, once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. Will the city clerk please call roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the August 2nd, 2021 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete the public comment card prior to speaking on the item. Your comment card must be presented to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. All speakers, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization before beginning your comment. If you are representing an organization, an affidavit is required stating you have the authority to speak on behalf of that organization. Please review tonight's agenda, and if you would like to make a comment, please bring your comment card to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Clayton Jameson.
Here.
Councilmember Paul Moore. Councilmember Laura Bentley. Councilmember Carol Kirkley. Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
And Councilmember Rick Morrig. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I want to welcome everybody here tonight. And I'm going to ask the city clerk to please sound the next item on our agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. That item is approval of meeting agenda, agenda item number 21216. Mayor?
Okay, I'd like to move an unfinished business item and a new business item to proceed, reports and presentations. And is there anything else on the agenda? Anybody like to discuss? Okay, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the suggested amendments.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Bentley and a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please just say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. Next item is general public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during tonight's meeting. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Please remember, this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes for a remark. The city encourages you to review the agenda tonight, and if you wish to speak, to bring your comment card to the clerk right now. And I will ask, is there any general public comment?
Mayor, I do not have, bear with me, let me just make sure. I do not have any general
Okay.
public comment.
All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, that first item is approval of the July 7th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes, agenda item number 21217. Our next item, approval of a services agreement between the City of Milton and Network Cabling Infrastructures, LLC, for the low voltage data cooling installation in the court chamber, agenda item number 21218. Our third item, approval of an agreement between the City of Milton and Premier Events regarding event logistics management for Crabapple Fest. It's agenda item number 21219. Our next item, approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Near Electrical Contractors, Inc. for the purchase and installation of a natural gas generator and automatic transfer switch at City Hall. Agenda item number 21220. Our fifth item, approval of a task order from BM and KPC to provide construction inspection services for the Providence Park ADA Trail, Boardwalk, and Pier. Agenda item number 21221. Our sixth item, approval of a task order for BM and KPC to provide construction inspection services for the Hopewell Road and Bethany Way intersection. Improvements is agenda item number 21222. Our next item, approval of a task order for BM and KPC to provide construction inspection services for the former Milton Country Club trail construction and cart path removal. It's agenda item number 21223. Our next item, approval of a task order for BM and KPC to provide pre-construction services for the Birmingham Road Middle Bridge design. Agenda item number 21224. Our ninth item, approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Penn Court LLC for the renovation of the clubhouse at the former Milton Country Club. Agenda item number 21225. Our next item, approval of the subdivision plats and revisions. The first development is the Homestead Milton on Hopewell Road. It's land lot 543 through 547 and 606 through 609 and 617 through 618. It's District 2, Section 2. It is a minor plat to create 32 large lots ranging in size from 3.04 acres to 10.33 acres. It is a total of 172.8 acres with a density of 0.19 lots per acre. Our second development is Providence Manor on New Providence Road. It's land lot 1067. It's District 2, Section 2. It is a minor plat subdividing one parcel into 3 tracts. It's a total of 3 acres with 1 lot density. This is agenda item number 21226. Mayor?
Okay, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Moore for approval of the consent agenda as read. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to reports and presentations. If the city clerk could please sound the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item is proclamation recognizing the Milton Mustang swim team. Mayor Lockwood?
Okay? Always a pleasure to make these kind of, present these kind of proclamations. So thank you guys for being here. And this is a proclamation recognizing the 2021 Milton Mustangs swim team. And I'm going to read this proclamation out first, and then I would like to ask those here tonight to step forward and we'll present the proclamations. Whereas the Milton Mustangs swim team has been training and competing out of the city pool since the summer of 2018, soon after the city purchased the former Milton Country Club. And whereas the program has grown significantly since its inception, from 87 swimmers in the first year to over 200 for this past season. And whereas these scores of young athletes between the ages of 5 and 18 develop skills, stamina, and character as members of the Mustang team. And whereas their success and growth is made possible by adults who help run the program, led by the Milton residents, Beth Wilson and Stephanie Minot, and who have been volunteer organizers from the beginning. And whereas Milton Mustangs team went undefeated this summer, winning all 5 of their meets to become 2021 dual meet division champions. And whereas swimmers broke 24 individual event records and 10 relay records for the Mustangs program during the 2021 season. And whereas the Milton Mustangs had 33 individuals and relay participants in the divisional meet at the Georgia Tech Aquatic Center, finishing in the top 10 among 44 teams. And now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, hereby recognize and honor the 2021 Milton Mustangs swim team and congratulate them on their hard work and achievement. And this is given under our hand and the seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on the 2nd day of August, 2021. And I just got to say how proud we are of the Milton Mustangs. If you guys that are representing the Milton Mustangs would step forward and we'll present the proclamations.
Don't be bashful, guys. Come on up.
We need to build a trophy cabinet over there.
What I'm going to do is, if you guys are up here, then I'll go stand behind the council. So you get it behind me.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, sir. All right, congratulations. And you guys are welcome to leave unless you're going to sit through a few more hours. Okay, we'll move on to our reports and presentations. If Tammy, if you'll sound the final item.
That item is presentation on the draft capital improvements element 2021 annual update. Mr. Bob Buscemi.
Hi, I'm Bill Ross, president of Ross Associates. I thought Bob was going to come up and talk first, but okay. Oh, there he is. I was looking back there. Being an annual update report, this means you've seen them every year. They're required by the State Department of Community Affairs for any community that has impact fees. And the report has 2 elements, a financial report based on the last fiscal year, so that ended, end of last September. And that financial report is, what did you collect, what did you do with it, how much is left over, etc. The second part is an update to the so-called community work program. Now, the financial report is looking backwards to the last fiscal year. The community work program is actually looking forward for what projects are anticipated to be undertaken in the coming 5 years. So that, of course, if we drop last year and we add future year to keep the 5 years going. Besides that, you're in good shape. I should introduce Paige Hatley. Paige has been working hard. She made me speak, but she's been working hard on these reports with staff. And as you probably know, also pretty soon we're going to start updating the entire impact fee program, and that will start fairly soon. If you have any questions, please fire away.
Any questions?
That was easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to the moved agenda items. If Tammy, if you'll please call those out.
Mayor, that item is consideration of an ordinance of the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct the 2021 election. It's agenda item number 21-200. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to let, the IGA itself is the same as the terms that were the last time we talked about it at the last meeting. I believe in the interim, based upon the public comment we received, as well as the direction of the council and the comment that the council had, I know that you all have expedited look into options. I believe the city manager is prepared to offer you some guidance.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the July 19th, 2021 council meeting, the Mayor and Council considered an ordinance authorizing Fulton County to conduct Milton's municipal election for the November 2021 general election. The item was deferred 2 weeks to the August 2021 meeting with a direction by Council to staff to conduct a feasibility study into the city's ability to conduct its own municipal election for the November 2021 general election. The three main areas of concern included election integrity, cost, and feasibility. While the most important of the three is likely election integrity, that topic was beyond staff's ability to analyze and therefore not included in our study. Further, while a significant amount of research was conducted by staff in cooperation with members of the community and the Secretary of State's office, 2 weeks allowed for only a limited review of a rather complex topic. With the help of members of the community, staff got a jump on the cost analysis. Staff's analysis focused on the November general election and did not account for costs associated with possible runoff. Based upon a worst-case scenario, our first-year costs were estimated at $120,557, which included the cost for a full complement of paper ballots and the purchase of 7 ballot boxes at $6,000 each. It is possible that the city does not require the full complement of ballots, but the last 5 years indicate a wide range of voter turnout, with 2 years exceeding 20,000, one of which was not a presidential election. We could not risk running out of ballots. We may also be able to lease or borrow ballot boxes, but we cannot confirm the availability for borrowing, renting, or even purchasing them in a short time frame. The stated cost of the agreement with Fulton County for the general election would be $84,671, leaving a gap of roughly $35,886. Assuming that the assessment correctly identified all costs and we had to purchase the ballot boxes, the city would not save year one. However, our break even may be in as little as 5 years. Please, I forwarded you the analysis. Another issue identified regarding cost was the newly included no refund clause and our ability to potentially negotiate the fee. I can't tell you where the no refund clause came from, but I can report that it exists in all of the North Fulton agreements at the same rate, which is $2.96 and $2.96 and $2.46 per registered voter for the general and runoff elections, respectively. Historically, the county refunded the city for any excess fees on a pro rata basis, effectively cutting the cost almost in half during the last odd year cycle. The uniformity of the contract language across the cities, coupled with the response that we got from Fulton County, leads me to believe that the rates are not negotiable. The feasibility assessment of managing our municipal election was a much heavier lift. Based on our research, nothing legally precludes us from administering our own election this November. However, the following are some of the opportunities and risks that we identified during our assessment. Opportunities included that we have an educated and engaged citizenry who appear eager to assist. Another is that voter turnout may be less than other years and provide us an opportunity to gain experience under less voluminous circumstances. Some of the risks associated would be, while we do currently administer our own qualifying, absentee ballots can be applied for as early as August 16th. This would give staff just 2 weeks to learn all that is necessary to administer the absentee ballots and for Tammy to obtain her election superintendent certification. Another risk is staff is unsure if we can secure the legally required ballot boxes. Inquiries thus far point towards a supply issue. Another risk is the city can only administer, or concern is the city can only administer the municipal election, our local races. We have no authority to administer items such as T-SPLOS, county, state, or federal ballots, and that's currently, I believe that our senator is introducing a bill in the next cycle. The city would likely use City Hall for early voting, creating 2 locations for Milton early voters. That creates the risk of losing voters between two locations. The city would have to secure polling locations for Election Day, and we may or may not be able to co-locate with the county. We risk encountering issues with securing appropriate locations, and again, possibly with losing voters between multiple sites. We would also have to enter into intergovernmental agreements with the government-owned sites, which takes significant time, resources, and the risk of it not being approved. According to the Secretary of State's office, should the city choose not to contract with the county, they can move the polling location to anywhere within the precinct. And finally, the city has no staff with municipal elections experience. Should the council choose to move forward, a consultant would be recommended, and that is not figured into the cost analysis. Thus, our recommendation, the assessment completed over the past 2 weeks was a significant undertaking by both staff and community advisors. While we were able to ascertain answers to most of the pressing questions, an assessment such as this requires considerable more depth and analysis. The risks associated with election integrity are immeasurable, but beyond the scope of this assessment. However, the responsibility to administer a fair election in our democratic republic is a tremendous obligation, one that would now be ours. Consequently, the risks of administering our own municipal election for the upcoming November general election appear to outweigh the rewards. As such, staff recommends that we do not administer our own municipal election this November. Furthermore, it appears that statutorily our only other choice is to contract with the county within which Milton is located. Therefore, staff recommends entering into the intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County. However, I would recommend that we appeal to our Fulton County elected officials to reconsider the no refund clause and to return to the pro rata refund offered in previous election cycles. It is further recommended that the City of Milton participates in the exploratory committee discussed at the North Fulton Municipal Association on July 29, 2021, to comprehensively study the opportunities available with our North Fulton partner cities for future elections. Thank you.
Okay, I'll check and see. Do you have any public comment on this?
We do, Mayor.
Okay.
Our first one I will read into the record. It is from Kevin Muldowney at 3325 Kentworth Lane. Milton should have control of their elections for financial as well as voter integrity reasons. Fulton has done a dismal job in the past. I'd like to next invite Ms. Lisa Cawley to the podium.
My name is Lisa Cawley. I live at 14680 Freemanville Road, Milton. The IGA between the cities and Fulton County this year do not include reimbursement. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. Why historically have the cities been receiving money back after the election based on actual costs, and now we don't? If Milton agrees to the IGA with Fulton, we will spend $84,761 on an election which will be conducted exactly the same, pretty much, as the 2019 election. The 2019 election cost the city under $42,000. If we have a runoff this year, it's going to cost us another $70,000. I'm interested to know specifically how an election run exactly the same way, with the same polling locations and the same staffing and pretty much the same voter turnout, is going to cost the Milton taxpayer double what it did in 2019. It doesn't make any sense. Polling locations do not need more staffing than what is normal for this municipal election. Due to the flat fee increase, how can we agree to this IGA with Fulton to run our election in November? What justification has Fulton provided in detail for the flat fee increase in this year's IGA? I believe the city can conduct our own municipal election this November for tens of thousands of dollars less. We have prior Fulton County poll managers and volunteers who are ready to assist Milton now to run our own election. We have a list of volunteers already signed up to work the elections in Fulton. The list can be provided to the city. This is a list that's been worked on for over 2 months. These people are willing to work the Fulton County, in Fulton County for the upcoming elections. Ballot boxes can be purchased rather easily through a website or Amazon, locked boxes. The polling locations are already set. They're the same locations as previously, so there's no mystery in securing the polling locations. And we do know for a fact that we can share the polling locations with Fulton County. So we can have voters come in and vote using paper ballots and then circle through the early voting location and vote for T-Splost. That's proven, that's the fact. As far as communicating with the residents and the change of the process, the only change is we're doing it now and we're using paper ballots. Where we're voting and everything else remains the same. It wasn't that long ago when this is how we all voted. We're not recreating the wheel. This year's flat fee with no reimbursement should be reason enough for the city to move forward to run our own election. How will it be explained to the taxpayer that this small election in November is going to cost us double what it did in 2019? The risk exposure, in my opinion, is low considering the fee increase from Fulton County. We are actually giving the Fulton County Board of Elections over another $40,000 to do the same job they did in 2019. Therefore, I'm asking the city to not enter into the IGA today with Fulton and instead conduct our own election this November. And I'd also like the city to get the detail from Fulton as to how are they justifying doubling the fee. It makes no sense when we have 3,000 on average showing up to vote every municipal election. It just doesn't make sense, and I'd like to have those answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more?
Next, we'd like to invite Karen Dubin to the podium.
Karen Dubin, 200 Davis Glen Court. I'm only going to basically discuss some of the, I think, the risks that you feel that are important for running this election. I think one of them happens to be the ballots. Ballots will be, the company that's doing it is Tentinel. They're the only ones in the state that will have the water seal mark paper. So the ballots can be purchased from them. The quote that I got today was 40 cents a ballot. And the ballots could be, they need to be here in the city 21 days ahead. So those ballots would be the provisional ballots, absentee ballot, and the ballot to vote for voting day, for election day. There's another one I hear about the ballot boxes. Ballot boxes we can either purchase or we can basically get one from Fulton County. I don't know if anybody wants to go, down there, but they have extra 38 ballot boxes from the last election. So that's not a big issue. And then I hear that about the co-sharing of the room in the library. If I have looked it up and it's in the Georgia code, there is not a problem sharing the library. So on one side of the room, you would have people doing the paper ballots, and the other side of the room would be for the Fulton County for the tax bill. So there's no problem sharing the room. It wouldn't be a real confusion for people. I mean, it's in the same room. The only other thing that I have to say is, I guess, basically is the cost. I mean, I don't understand, like Lisa said, why we're being charged the cost that we're, being charged, and we're not getting a rebate or reimbursement back. I mean, all of you should know the way Fulton County is. I mean, I can't even get any answers from them. The last thing I want to say is, in doing the paper ballots, you need the voter rolls. So in talking to two other the cities that did the paper ballots, they have requested early voter rolls early, because the voter rolls are used to check in people when they come in the door with their license, that you check them off, that you know that they voted. So without the voter rolls, you can't do paper ballots. So I'm asking the city to please think about doing the election. I know it's a small one, and we're not asking you to do any other election next year. We're just looking into doing this one. So please consider it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do we have any more public comment?
We do, Mayor.
Okay.
I'd like to next invite Ms. Cynthia Qualtire to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Qualtier, and I live at 350 Majestic Cove in Milton. Thank you for allowing me to provide public comment for a second time. Voter integrity is at the heart of our democracy. Fulton County and their contractor, Happy Faces, whose contract was recently renewed by the Fulton County Commissioners, has a proven track record of sloppy and irresponsible management of elections. Why would we consider using them? I do not want my City of Milton tax dollars wasted on an inept organization that is in the process of being reviewed by the state legislature for poor performance and mismanagement. As I said in my previous city council meeting, my personal vote was taken from me by Fulton County during the presidential election. I hold a voter ID card, but I no longer appear on the voter rolls. The citizens of Milton deserve better for our tax dollars. I urge each city council member to vote no against using Fulton County Board of Elections for our municipal elections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Ms. Kathleen Kenworthy. Okay, it didn't, okay, I'll read it for you. Located at 3505 Peacock Road. I support Milton running our own elections. I suggest charging Fulton County for T-Splosh election. Thank you. And our final public comment on this item is Mr. Eric Edstrom. I invite you to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Eric Edstrom, 120 Stone Orchard Court. My comments are pretty brief and simple. The prior speaker spoke about the difference in costs. It's a $40,000 difference. My prior speakers also embellished with respect to other solutions, including paper balloting, et cetera, as well as also the history in terms of the use of paper ballots in prior elections. A couple things I'd like to just to highlight that will perhaps differentiate my commentary from the other citizens. First is lack of control. We've already heard Fulton County is under investigation ad nauseum. We all know, or we believe, we know that there's been some, I'll politely call it missteps by Fulton County, just to be civil. Paper ballots are certainly a solution. For 243 years, most of this country has engaged in paper balloting. Pretty simple process to me. Absentee ballots. It certainly has been an exercise of futility in a lot of respects with respect to Fulton County in terms of measuring, monitoring, tracking effectively even absentee ballots. That's a risk to allow Fulton County to continue to do that. Lastly, one thing that we have not spoken of is that the governor signed into law most recently a variety of new voting regulations. So I just want to make sure that whatever direction we go in, and my recommendation is certainly to have Milton do it themselves, is to make sure we have strict alignment with those new voting regulations and laws that were really recently enacted. Other things that were mentioned briefly during the reading, and I just took a note on this, in terms of staff knowledge and some other risks associated with that. I think that staff knowledge has been really dispelled by prior speakers. Relative to other elections that were also conducted by Milton using paper balloting, certainly there is a justifiable and a history associated with good quality paper balloting and success in the outcome of those elections during that time frame. So I think we could dispel that. Some of the other things I would just like to put into the record with respect to this conversation would be, it's pretty simple. One vote, one person, single piece of identification. Pretty simple. Last thing I'd like to talk about, and probably this is not the right forum for it, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Milton used to be its own county. At some point, we probably need to look at that again. Certainly, it's a state legislative issue, and I'll table that because I know that's outside of the sphere of this conversation. But nonetheless, at least we should probably address that as part of the record in the future. The point is, I think Milton has the ability, the quality of staffers, in addition to legions of volunteers from both parties, right? The primary two parties that are out there that will help support the election process. I think paper balloting speaks for itself. There's a vast amount of integrity issues currently with the Fulton County process.
1 minute warning.
Thank you. Fulton County process that remain yet to be satisfied by the voters, as well as probably you as folks implementing this opportunity. With that, I urge you to vote against using Fulton County. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Did you say that's the final?
That
public comment?
concludes.
Okay. I'll open up I'll be glad to make a statement first. Even like one of the first speakers that you read, I totally agree that it's not only the financial aspect, but also voter integrity and professional management of the election, I think is very important. And so I totally, as I've said before, support working towards us being in control of the elections. That being said, if we were talking about this in January, and I want to commend a couple of folks that spoke tonight that are willing to help out. And Karen and Lisa, thank you very much. And like I told them, I'm just, if we'd had more time, but I just don't, my concern would be trying to branch off and do something right now. This close might not be good. I've talked to our legislators. I know all the North Fulton city mayors are talking about, getting together and looking at it for next year and all that when we have some time to make sure that we do it right. So that being said, that's my position on this. But again, I certainly think it's very, very important. And I commend and thank Ms. Durbin and Colley for your willingness to help out and all the other volunteers, as well as those that have spoken tonight. I totally agree with you. So
I have a comment.
go ahead, Carol.
I think this is a slam dunk for the future, for the long term. And I would like to say that I have big concerns because we've also had conversations about everything else that is involved. So I have strong concerns that this can be done at the level that we would like to do things at this first go round. So I would not be in favor of that. However, I don't want to get into analysis paralysis with a whole bunch of other city councils and try to go as a block. So I think at the very least, we stay on our own path so that the next election, we are in control, because I think it's been very eloquently stated. We need that control to ensure at least that this little village has very fair and honest elections.
And I also want to add that I'm certainly committed to digging in and pushing Fulton County to see where the increase was and why we would not be rebated or anything over the true cost. But anybody else? Peyton?
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for us to send a message to Fulton County that this, in my opinion, will be the last election that they do. In my opinion, when we don't get the rebate that we've been receiving every other election, that's disturbing to me. And I think we will have 2 years to determine what the best course of running our own municipal elections are. And I think Milton needs to set an example of how to do things right. And I think we're very good at that. So I'm looking forward to the 23 election that we host. So.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'll just echo what my fellow councilmen have said, and that is that I think it's extraordinary that Fulton County once again is basically just trying to force an issue here with no negotiation. The fact that there is no refund, the no negotiation clause, it's just extraordinary to me that they continue to put the screws to those who are supposed to be served by them, and yet they make it as if it's a kingdom, and we're the peasants bowing to the king. And I just I think it can't get here fast enough where we take control of our own elections. I think that there is good fiscal reason for us to take consideration to that. I don't recall who said it, Peyton or Carol, but I don't necessarily want to have to worry about following the other cities up here. I think Milton is capable of setting our own path and encourage us to do so to ensure that we can take the right step as soon as possible.
Rick? And Joe? Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was going to say ditto on all the other comments. I think that Fulton County, I can't imagine a world where running elections is a high priority to a county operation. I think it's something they do, and they do it because they have to do it. But I think their behavior is proving they're trying to incent us to go someplace else, and nobody has taken the bait yet. So next year, hopefully, we'll have time to put everything in place, get the ball rolling, and like Peyton said, manage our own. So I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, Rick?
Yeah, spent a lot of time on this the last few weeks. I've got a concern, especially with the lack of a true up. We're all Fulton County taxpayers. So this is the same county that we've already paid taxes to, yet they're going to basically put a surcharge and charge us extra money on the front end. If you look back at past elections, and you look at the true up or the cost rebate that they give back to us, they've always done that. Why they're not doing it this time, I have talked to our Fulton County Commissioner, who directed me to go to the Director of Elections, which I've placed a call there to understand what's the breakdown of the cost for $296 per registered voter, not voters. They have to staff so that they can actually handle all the voters. But that cost, what does that comprise? What's made up in it? So I don't understand why we're getting charged by our county a surcharge, which is going directly to the county coffers. It has nothing to do with benefiting Milton residents. That's a concern that I personally have. If we do not, and it sounds like we're moving the direction of approving Fulton County, I think we need to continue to push. I've got calls out. I would ask that the city manager and staff work with us to try to actually pursue getting underneath the numbers. And I don't really care what other cities are doing for this. I think we in Milton need to get underneath the cost, understand exactly what it is that they're appropriating or charging us, the $296 per person. Plus, if we ever had a runoff, then another $2.46 per registered voter. I just think it's time to do that. I think we still need to fight. Maybe we won't get it, but at least we've gone on record and we're going to try. The other thing, which I've floated out there and asking a couple people from the county, is they're going to be setting up these machines. Let's say we use Fulton County for our elections. They're going to be setting up the Dominion machines, even if we're using them, for the T-SPLOST, the countywide referendum. One of the things that I asked our commissioner is, why aren't we doing a cost sharing? If we end up using it, should be cost neutral. We shouldn't be charged extra. Understand maybe you charge us extra at the beginning, but after the election is done, you're going to know what your actual costs are. We should only be charged what the cost was. And furthermore, I think we should in fact do cost sharing, because the T-SPLOST is not, that's a county-wide issue. Fulton County is going to have to stand that up and bring those machines in to do that, whether we did our election locally or whether or not we're doing it through Fulton County. And those are my comments. And I would ask if we approve this, Fulton County, the IGA will continue to work to try to get a better term on this. And then also, let's not wait until 2 years from now. Let's start looking at how we're going to do this ourselves and get moving on that sooner rather than later.
And just a quick comment on that. I totally support an audit of whatever the IGA, and I'd be interested to know the timeframes too, when we received it, when we considered it, so that we do have full information, even more than what you provided. And I'd also like to thank the citizens that have worked on this to bring this to our attention.
Any other questions or comments? I'll open this item up for motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 21-200.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2 with Councilmember Morig and Moore deny. Okay, if we can move on to our new business item.
That next item is consideration of a resolution to transmit the draft City of Milton Comprehensive Plan 2040 to the Atlanta Regional Commission, known as the ARC, and Georgia Department of Community Affairs, the DCA. It's agenda item number 21228. Ms. Laura Richter.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Laura Richter. I've been your lead consultant from TSW, helping you navigate the comprehensive plan for the past year. Just want to give you a quick update. We completed our 30-day public comment period ending on the 26th of July. We reviewed the comments, myself, Bob, Tracy, and Jackie. We are now moving to the transmittal phase. We hope to send that off tomorrow to start the 35-day review period by both the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Department of Community Affairs. Once that period is over, we will review their comments, incorporate them into the document, and plan for an adoption, I believe, on October 18th by you all. I will come back and speak to you then. And that is all I have for you tonight.
Okay, any questions? Paul?
Laura, I just had an 11th hour update from one of our citizens regarding, she'd looked at the maps that we were including, and she didn't take any exception with what we were putting forward. I think it's great work. Nice job by you and the team to pull together what is going to be our recommendation to continue to create great place to be, live, work, and play here in Milton. But in particular, the constituent pointed out to me that Day Road on the map is not showing the proper length. And I know that that's going to be a critical play in terms of some of their particular property is for sale. And because that's important, it's a dirt road, a gravel road, it's going to be important that it be reflected properly in all of our maps.
Okay.
So I'm only taking it on the recommendation of the constituent. I didn't have a chance to research it myself.
Okay.
If that could please be looked into prior to the submission, just to ensure that it's properly reflected.
Sure, absolutely.
It's-
I'll review.
And we know why. It's because dirt road, 3 acre minimums, preservation of rural Milton. Those are all the important things that we need to make sure we're taking a look at. But
Absolutely.
terrific work. And Jackie, I know that you didn't take all the credit the other day for what was done. Thank you for sharing the credit between you and Laura. So great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Just a quick comment as well. I know that you addressed a flurry of public input as a result, so thank you very much for your timeliness on that. And I'd like to just remind the council and the citizens that the comp plan has a work plan associated with it. So there's words and there's a work plan, and every item on the work plan comes back before us for the detailed budget process and details. So it's there, and we just need to get to work on it. And so, thank you.
Would ask, do we have any public comment, Tammy?
Not on this item, Mayor, no.
Rick?
Yeah, just to echo what the other two council people did. I appreciate what you've done. I also appreciate all the volunteer work from our committee and the citizens that spent a lot of time, put a lot of effort. I think this is we've done well in the past. I think this is probably our best one. And also want to thank both Paul Moore and Laura Bentley for sitting on that and taking their time in the whatever to do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Great.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks.
So if there's no public comment, any more questions, I'll open up for motion on this item.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to transmit the draft City of Milton Comprehensive Plan for 2040 to the ARC and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Bentley with a second from Councilmember Moore. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, we don't have any first presentation items, so we'll move on to our first public hearing.
That item, Mayor, is consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to establish the ad valorem tax rate of the city of Milton for fiscal year 2022 and for other purposes. The first presentation was held on August the 2nd in a special called meeting, and the first public hearing was held on August the 2nd in a special called meeting. It is agenda item number 21227. Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You may have a little deja vu, but I'm going to go through the presentation exactly the same as we did this morning for anyone who may not have been able to hear it or tune in. So we are here this evening to discuss setting the 2021 millage rate. This is the second of 3 required public hearings, and we will go into the details of those requirements a little later in the presentation. First, we have the agenda for this public hearing. We are going to go over some important definitions, followed by the state's requirements for the public hearings and advertisements regarding setting a millage rate. Next, we will discuss millage rate options, and please keep in mind that you can approve any millage rate up to the legal cap of 4.731 mils for maintenance and operating. Following that, I will break down the digest by category and show the taxes that would be levied at the capped millage rate and the rollback millage rate, which will be followed up by a discussion of the projected revenues for fiscal year 2022. After that, we will look at some ways property owners can reduce their tax liability, how to calculate a tax bill, and the value of citizens' tax dollars. Finally, in closing, we will discuss levels of service under the different millage rate options. Here we have some definitions. The first one is a mill. A mill is $1 per $1,000 of assessed property value, or 0.001 times the assessed value. That is the rate at which we tax property owners. Your fair market value is an estimate of the market value of your property as determined by the Fulton County Board of Assessors. They do have some legal requirements to keep those values at market and no comparables to sales and things of that nature. The assessed or taxable value is the value that's equal to 40% of the fair market value. Property taxes are calculated by multiplying the millage rate by the assessed or taxable value and adjusted for any exemptions. We have our rollback rate, which is the previous year's millage rate minus the millage equivalent to the total net assessed value added by reassessments, and the millage equivalent, which is the equation where the reassessments of existing real property is divided by the current year's net digest and then multiplied by the prior year's millage rate. I do have some math behind that later, so you can see how that works in addition to just seeing the definition. Anytime the city proposes a millage rate that exceeds the computed rollback rate, they must hold 3 public hearings to allow for citizen input. In addition to the public hearings, the city is required to place 2 ads and prepare a formal press release. At least 1 week before each public hearing, the notice of property tax increase must be published, and at least 1 week before the meeting where the millage rate will be adopted, the current tax digest and 5-year history of levy must be published. Both ads must also be made available on the city's website, and our communications director, Greg Pizzello, has helped me ensure that these requirements are met. This evening, you can see that our calendar for this year was the first presentation this morning at 9 a.m. The first public hearing was also at that meeting. We're here this evening at the second public hearing, and next Monday on the 9th, we will have the third public hearing and unfinished business where we will vote to set the millage rate for 2021 taxes. Here you'll see the advertisement that was placed in the paper for the notice of property tax increase, as well as the history and the digest and 5-year history of levy. I also like to include in this presentation the snippet of the calculation we must use so everyone can see the exact numbers as prepared by the Fulton County Tax Commissioner's Office and the Assessor's Office. I just like to point out here that the exemptions are based on our estimate, based on last year's digest values because of the timing in which we get a request to send in our exemptions. So those are our best estimates at this time. They do change, but Fulton County does not collect the data on those changes. So what you see here may not exactly reflect what you see in some other reports that we have that are more accurate to the true up of what we actually have exempted property at. Here are the math behind those ads. As mentioned earlier, the math here calculates the figures you see in the advertisements. We do not have to go over them in detail, but I find it important to include so citizens can review them and see how those numbers from the information provided by Fulton County flow through the required calculations and get to those rates that you see published. Again, the notice of property tax increase is at 6.08%. That's when you take into consideration that impact of the reassessed values. And then you have your 5-year history and levy, and those are comparing 100% collections year over year, and you have a 9.3% increase shown there. In the next few slides, we'll go over the millage rate scenarios, including the capped millage rate of 4.731 mils, which also happens to be Milton's current millage rate, as well as the calculated rollback rate, which would offset any increases that resulted from reassessments of existing real property, which this year is at 4.460 mils. At the bottom of this slide, you will see the separately calculated green space bond millage rate. This is the variable rate used to allow for property tax collections for debt service payments on the bond, including principal and interest that will be due in FY 2022. This rate is addition to the M&O rate and is not included in that capped millage of 4.731. This year, you can see that we are requesting 0.487 to cover the debt service payments. On this slide, we have the net M&O digest and the taxes that will be levied under the 2 different millage rate options we discussed. While the levy is based on a 100% collection rate, we do not budget based on that collection rate. The digest is a snapshot in time and is subject to change based on appeal decisions and exemption updates. In addition, historical data shows that Milton collects approximately 97% of real property levy, 65% of the personal property, and 55% of the motor vehicle in year 1. You'll see here that at year 1 at 100% collection would be $13,867,740 at the 4.731 mils and $13,073,371 at the 4.460 mils. On this slide, you can see the anticipated revenue projections based on the collection rates we just talked about. Please note that the capped millage rate is 6% more than the rollback rate, which correlates to the calculations we went over earlier. And lastly, you can see at the bottom the current amended real property and current year collections as of last Friday. That's just for a reference for you to see where we are this year compared to what we expect to collect next year. Under the 4.731 mils at those 97, 65, and 55% rates, we would collect $13,334,400. And under the 4.460, that'd be $12,570,582. This summary compares the current projections for FY 2022 to the amended budget for FY 2021 as it stands today. Again, we are still working to finalize some of these figures, but nothing should change in any material amount between now and when you see the budget presented to you next Monday. I just want to point out that although it looks like property taxes going down, that category includes more than just your real personal and motor vehicle. It also includes things like intangible, real estate, title ad valorem, and some of those are anticipated to be reduced. So while real property is projected to go up 5.1% and personal property is actually projected to reduce by 2.4%. Overall, that category is looking like it will be decreased by 0.3%. Again, we will go over all this in great detail before you vote on the millage rate in the budget workshop next Monday. I would take a minute to talk about some of the opportunities for tax savings for property owners. As Milton's Digest is primarily residential, the city recognizes several exemptions in order to reduce the tax liability for qualifying property owners. There's the basic homestead exemption. There are 3 exemptions available to our senior population, including a full value option and another full value option for those with permanent disabilities. And finally, we have implemented the floating homestead CPI exemption, which applies to the primary residence and up to 5 contiguous acres of land. This is the exemption where even though your assessment may be increasing on those assessment notices, this exemption comes into place to keep that increase at that 3% or less. This year, it's actually at 1.2%. We'll go over that again later when we talk about the assessments. Exemption applications for the city are due by April 1st of each calendar year to qualify for that year's tax bill. The qualifying income for those income-based exemptions was at $72,264 for 2021, and that is based on the annual maximum Social Security benefit for a worker retiring at full retirement age. So each year that will change based on the prior year's figures from the Social Security Administration. Finally, in addition to the exemptions that are offered between the county and the city, there is the conservation use value assessment, which is a little bit of a different tool to keep your tax liability down. So properties under 2,000 acres, and there's typically no minimum, but you have to do a little more paperwork if you have 10 or fewer acres with the county. You do apply through Fulton County. And there is a requirement to maintain the property at those standards which you apply for based on that agricultural or conservation use for a period of 10 years. If you are approved, the property value will be based on your land use rather than your market value. So there should be some opportunity for some savings for those qualifying properties. Here we have a sample of that tax assessment notice that everyone that owns property in Milton receives around April through July, depending on the year. A few things I'd just like to point out that it is important to note the assessment is not a bill. And although the county does provide an estimate at the bottom of the assessments, property owners should not use that to calculate their anticipated taxes for Milton for 2 main reasons. Number 1, tax assessment notices go out before the digest is sent to the cities for them to begin the process of setting the millage rate. So Fulton County uses the prior year's millage rate in this estimate. As you know, we are here tonight talking about setting the millage rate, so there's no way they would be able to have that information at the time of mailing those. And number 2, Fulton County does not maintain parcel level exemption data for Milton's exemptions. This is key for our citizens. We get a lot of questions around this time about this. If you qualify for a city exemption, it will not appear on your assessment notice. We get a large volume of calls from our senior population each year concerned that we may have missed their full value exemption, as well as many of the property owners who qualify for that floating exemption, believing that we're increasing their taxes beyond the allowable by law. So what you'll see is the assessments have to be true to the property value. That is Fulton County's job to keep those up. If you were to sell your home, that value has to be right for them to be able to assess the taxes to the next property owner. The exemption is where that relief comes in, and it is not shown on those assessments. So we just like to tell our community that so they understand nothing has been missed. The county just does not collect that level of data. Also, the county, that's what we have. They send those out each year, and we'll keep an eye on that for everybody to understand that a little better. And here we have how to calculate your tax bill. When we do set the millage rate and we do have those digest values, this is a little bit of math to help everyone understand exactly what we're doing with those numbers. You take the fair market value for a City of Milton home according to last year's digest was $575,000. And for this example, I'm just using a basic homestead exemption of $15,000 to keep it simple. Again, the floating homestead exemption can change that for each individual property. So you would take your assessed value, which is 40% of that fair market value, reduce it by any homestead exemptions, and that's where your floating exemption would come into place if you had one. You take that subtotal or your taxable value and multiply that by your millage rate, and that is how you get your taxes due. In this case, a average home with a market value of $575,000 would pay $1,017.17 under the 4.731 millage rate, or $958.90 under the 4.460. Here we've taken the proposed FY22 budget and broke it down accordingly to show you about what you are paying with those tax dollars for each service the City of Milton offers under the general fund. With the average fair market value of $575,000, and a basic homestead exemption of 15,000 at the 4.731 mils, which is the maximum allowable under our statute, you'd pay $1,017.65, which would boil down to $2.79 per day for the services that you see here, including public safety, municipal court, public works, our parks and recreation, community development, our general admin, our PAYGO program, as well as the debt service we owe on the revenue bonds. To compare millage rate to millage rate, here we have at 4.731 mils and at 4.460 mils, how that changes for each category. Finally, just a little information of the city's 4.731 millage rate and the rationale for that. The capped millage rate allows the city to continue the capital improvement plan under the currently approved timeline. It allows newly approved master plans to be addressed in a timely manner. As we have discussed at length over time, the capped millage rate has many challenges for us at Milton. Once again, we have a unique commercial footprint, which is limited. The assessed values in the community were historically not accurately maintained, and now they have been capped by that CPI exemption, limiting future revenue growth even further. And Milton has a dedication to its rural character, which is, results in a maintained that limited commercial growth and density. Lastly, we have the ability to defer capital maintenance, which would save more in the long run by prolonging life as opposed to costly premature replacements. So here I just want to take a step back and talk a little bit about how we budget here at the city and how that plays a part in deciding our millage rate. So we have our current operations versus our new initiatives discussion every year. And as always, the city's first priority is to maintain existing operations and services at the level our community has come to expect. Once corresponding funds have been allocated to those services, as well as the city's debt service requirements, new initiatives can then be taken into consideration. I have just a little sample here for road maintenance to show you exactly what that looks like. Current operations would include repaving roads as scheduled per our assessment kept by the Public Works Department. An enhanced level of service would include maybe if we had additional funding to repave additional roads needing attention sooner than had been originally anticipated. And a new complete initiative would be maybe constructing an entirely new road, such as we have Heritage Walk here that eases congestion throughout this area in downtown Crabapple. So as far as our service level requests, we have here at the city a lot of citizen feedback and involvement, and so these are some of the things we've heard from them over the years. And although staff has been focused on addressing these items with current resources, they continue to be main topics of discussion amongst our residents, including maintenance of newly acquired green spaces, such as hazard mitigation, trail maintenance and mowing, improved debris management, timely implementation of city plans, right-of-way mowing frequency, paving of additional roads, access to active park facilities, and more. And as always, there's an effort that would need to be put towards attracting and retaining highly talented workforce here at our city. We will be going over that proposed FY22 budget, including continued operations and new initiatives in detail before the vote on the millage rate next Monday. And you will see the funding requests directly at these tied to these categories to meet the community and ensure that Milton remains one of the best places to live in Georgia. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Up for questions, Rick?
Yeah, just one, and maybe this is directed more towards our legal counsel and city manager. We heard from resident talking about the concerns if they're on fixed income once they reach senior age, and is there anything more that the city could do to help? I guess my question goes to, we've had, I think, the same exemption dollar amount for a number of years. The question is, if we ever consider changing that, how would we go about doing that?
Yeah, if we're going to start talking about changing those exemptions are products of local law. Our recommendation would be to out some sort of a resolution of this, requesting your local delegation.
So it would be General Assembly would have to make the change for us.
My recommendation.
But I would think I would certainly support some changes and some, limits and whatnot or increases. So.
Thanks.
And just another quick comment. The PAYGO system that we use here in the city of Milton is this building was paid for, right? With PAYGO money, which is we saved for it. We didn't go into debt. So as we enter budgeting, I would love to hear your thoughts, Bernadette, on, ways that $763,000, rollback amount, how that could be used in a PAYGO kind of way. In the coming year. I know one year we bought the fire trucks that we needed and we saved a ton of money because we had the cash on hand to use it. And that's
we have looked at this, and primarily, as you said, any additional funding that we get through our capital millage rate goes directly towards our PAYGO program. We have a number of parks and recreation, both passive and active initiatives that are through our planning process that would go directly towards. And council could choose any one of them if the were not to be at the 4.731 to maybe delay or defer, including opening the passive parks, delaying the implementation of building out a new active park complex similar to Bell Memorial Park, delay continuing the completion of Providence Park. Those are the kind of items that we would think would be the areas where you could potentially defer if you had that less of that money.
Thank you.
Yeah, going back to Rick's point, and I know, Joe, you said you were in favor of that also, but yeah, raising that senior exemption is probably something that we should take a look at. So is that something we could do like a work session on later on and then give it to the legislative, people in January, whenever?
I already put it in my notes. We'll
Okay.
start working some stuff up and get something out before you and talk about it in a work session.
Right.
Probably better to get moving more sooner than later.
All right, great.
Do we have any public comment on this?
We do, Mayor. We have one.
Okay.
I'd like to invite Mr. Eric Edstrom to the podium.
Good evening again. Eric Edstrom, 120 Stone Orchard Court. I've lived in the city of Milton now since 2014 after relocating from the Northeast. Since I've been here, there's been a perpetual increase, sans a couple of 1 year, when there was a bit of a revolt because Fulton County, in terms of the assessors, could not derive what a fair market value was. Meanwhile, within the city of Atlanta and further south in our beloved county, other residents did not have any increase. In fact, they had a decrease. And they constantly ask we, the people of the northern county, to pay for their services. Now, mind you, this fee is assessed or being assessed specific to the city of Milton, and I understand that. Having taken a look at the city of Milton notice and the total millage rate since 2015 all the way through the current year, 2020, there's been an 11.3% cumulative increase in taxes. So my recommendation, being a finance person in my career, is why not try zero-based budgeting as an option? Before you just go in, constantly just put your hand in my wallet on a routine basis. And the trite comment, in my view, of, well, here's a way that you can go ahead and reduce your taxes, it's insufficient for the majority of us that are actually paying the tax bill. Not many of us has 2,000 acres worth of property in the confines of the city of Milton. Land is a premium, pretty rare. Mayor Lockwood, with all due respect, you're a developer, you know what's out there. You're outside business. So with that in mind, not quite sure an 11.37% increase since 2015 to 2020 is really sufficient without doing some hard examination on zero-based budgeting. Let's find out what it actually costs us to run the city, as opposed to cumulatively just adding on from baseline budgeting, which effectively says, well, last year my budget was $100,000, and this year now it's going to be, by virtue of the information that was placed on the screen, add 6% to that, so $106,000 for that same particular budget item. In my view, we the citizens, and each of you here on August the 9th, need to vote this particular property tax increase down. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Any more public comment?
That concludes the public comment on this item, Mayor.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any other questions or comments for Bernadette or staff? Okay.
Thank
We'll-
you.
Thank you, Bernadette. We'll move on to the zoning agenda. If Tammy, will please call the first item.
Thank you, Mayor. That first item is consideration of U21-01/VC21-03 at 2105 Bethany Way containing multiple parcels for a total of 18.07 acres by the PFAJ Revocable Trust dated 2/17/2019 to request a use permit for agricultural-related activities. It's Section 64-1797 and a two-part concurrent variance. The first, to allow the existing parking areas, wood pavilion, horse arenas, and driveways within the 100-foot activity setback. It's Section 64-1797D. The second, to allow the structure housing animals to be located within 100 feet of a property line. Section 64-1797E. It's agenda item number 21160. It was first presented at the May 24th, 2021 City Council meeting. It was deferred at the June 7th, 2021 City Council meeting, then deferred at the July 19th City Council meeting. Mr. Robin McDonald. And my apologies, Robin, let me add, the public hearing for this item was held on July the 19th. Therefore, we will move right into presentation. Thank you.
Thought I'd fix this to hide things, but anyway, good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're here tonight to continue to discuss the item that the city clerk just read into the item. Just want to make sure that everybody understands that the official public hearing occurred at the August 19th meeting, and so we're just picking up where we left off from that last meeting. With that said, I want to just review some recommended conditions from staff that varied from the last meeting. Yes, okay. So I went through a lengthy presentation last time. I won't bore you with that, but I will give you the conclusion and the latest recommended conditions. The proposed agricultural related activities use permit is inconsistent with the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan Update 2016 and objectives. In addition, the proposed agricultural related activities use permit is not compatible with surrounding land uses since it would operate concurrently with the by right uses of the farm winery and the equestrian related activities, including riding lessons, boarding of horses, as well as the request of a rural event use permit. And with that said, the applicant today has requested a withdrawal of that rural event facility use permit. Therefore, staff still recommends that U 21-01 be denied. In addition, that VC 21-03 parts 1 and 2 be denied. But if the mayor and city council chooses to approve the requested use permit and concurrent variances, staff has provided a set of recommended conditions below. Okay, so the first recommended condition, 1A, is to the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows. Agricultural related activities, including summer and other school children's school break camps, parties age 14 and under, agricultural farm equine-based educational activities, farm tours, and limited farm animal petting, excluding the following: exotic animals, zoo animals, kennels, for-profit horse shows, overnight camps or events, and on 18.027 acres. To the owner's agreement to abide by the following: substantial compliance with the site plan received by the Community Development Department on May 25th, 2021, and whereby the exact layout of the project may contain minor deviations approved by the Community Development Director, provided that the deviations remain consistent with the purpose and intent of the council's approval of the use permit. Notwithstanding the contents of the site plan, the project must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance, all other applicable city ordinances, and these conditions. The site plan may be revised with the approval of the Community Development Director in order to comply with the city codes and zoning conditions. Unless otherwise noted herein, compliance with all conditions shall be in place prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. Condition 3, to the owner's agreement to the following use requirements. A, days and hours of agricultural-related activities shall be the following. I, Monday through Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Number 2, Thursday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., but must conclude prior to the opening of the wine tasting room. B, there shall be no more than a total of 25 attendees per day, Monday through Friday, and no more than a total of 50 attendees on Saturday and Sunday for the agricultural-related activities. C, maximum sound of all music shall not exceed 45 dBA measured at the property lines. 4, to the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. A, provide adequate temporary bathroom facilities, including handicapped accessible, until which time permanent bathroom facilities can be provided. Said facilities shall be located at least 100 feet from any property line and out of view from Bethany Way or Hopewell Road. B, trash receptacles shall be located at least 100 feet from any property line. 5, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following requirements, dedications, and improvements. A, access to the site and frontage improvements shall be subject to the approval of the City of Milton Department of Public Works prior to the issuance of a business license, land disturbance permit, subdivision plat, or certificate of occupancy, whichever comes first. Entrances and frontage improvements shall conform to Chapter 48 streets, sidewalks, and other public places, and Chapter 64 zoning of the City of Milton's Code of Ordinances. B, if at such time the Director of Public Works determines that the traffic generated by the site impacts the operations of Bethany Way or Hopewell Road, he or she may require the owner to conduct a traffic study to determine if the development warrants any additional improvements at no cost to the city. If improvements are determined to be warranted, owner shall install those at no cost to the city. 5C, a stormwater management concept plan shall be submitted and approved by Milton Public Works Department prior to submission of land disturbance application if required. And so the next part is the concurrent variances, which is A, allow the existing, which is not correct. I'm sorry. So let me get to the correct conditions for that. So I'm going to put it up here on the. The mayor and city council so choose to concurrently approve the 2 requested concurrent variances. The first one would read, allow the existing parking areas to only include the 3 existing handicap spaces, the row of 8 parking spaces adjacent to Bethany Way, and the row of 13 parking spaces along the north property line adjacent to 13780 Hopewell Road. Wood pavilion, course arenas, and driveways within the 100-foot activity setback. Section 64-1797D. Okay. Thank you. B, allow the existing structures housing animals and agricultural equipment, feed or related stored items to be located within 100 feet of a property line. Section 64-1797E. BC 21-03, Part 2. And so that concludes staff's presentation of the recommended conditions if council chooses to approve this use permit for agricultural related activities. And again, I note that the applicant has officially requested a withdrawal of the next item, which is U21-02. Which is the rural event facility. So
Mr. Mayor, point of order on that, if I could. So as the clerk correctly said, we've had the public hearing on this one. now had the staff presentation with respect to this agenda item. And I think at this point, it is appropriate for there to be public comment that is appropriate. Really isn't going to be for or against. That's the language of zoning. So this is just going to be public comment.
Correct.
But I want to, and then after the public comment, I think it would, at that point, the council deliberates to the extent they have questions of the applicant. That's in order as well. So this is more just a cautionary instruction. So the next item, there has been a formal request for that one to be withdrawn. The head of the council, they may want to withdraw it, they may not want to, but if they do, there's no need for a public hearing on a withdrawal, and nor is there a requirement for public comment if an agenda item is not going forward. So I might recommend to those folks in attendance that if they want to speak on any topic involving the winery, they may want to take this opportunity to come speak, because when we get to the next agenda item, the council, in its good discretion, may choose not to have public comment on that one if it in fact wants to go ahead and do the withdrawal. And along that line, if someone, typically we shut off once the agenda item's called. I would ask for some grace on that. If someone was going to speak and just wants to get theirs in now, I think that would be in order as well, just to accommodate them.
Okay, and to make sure everybody's clear on that, if you wanted to speak on either item, recommending that you speak at this point. And again, if you haven't turned in a comment card and you wish to, we'll give a little bit of grace on that.
That's right. Okay.
So this time, unless there's a specific question for staff, I'll go ahead and allow public comment just on this item, and then you can certainly ask your questions and discuss.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first public comment is from Mr. Bill Garrett. Would you like to come to the podium? Mhm.
Bill Garrett, 13450 Hopewell Road, next door neighbor. Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad this thing's coming to an end. I've had a lot of closing arguments in my life, and I think y'all have heard every closing argument that could be, because over the years, over the several meetings that we've had, the only thing I can say is I'm asking that you take what you heard. I know that there's been a lot of letters to you. I know that facts have been laid out to you from both sides, and I'm asking you to look at it from the standpoint of what if you were living next door or in an immediate vicinity and next door to this facility? Would you want it approved as is requested? I think the request that has been made by a group that is has been trying to work with Ms. Jackson is a reasonable situation. And I'm asking that the mayor and the council to look at those items that have been written down to you and sent to you in letters. And I know you've written it and read it probably 4,000 times. You're tired of it as I am. But I'm asking you to vote for a fair and equitable and reasonable solution to this situation that will not endanger or cause the neighbors and the people who are surrounding the areas to suffer any kind of damages. They don't want business next door to them. As far as this is agricultural area, we'll ask you to keep it that way. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your help.
Thank you. All right, Tammy, if you please call the next.
Thank you,
speaker.
Mayor. Mr. Bill Chrysalis. I hope I pronounced that right. We invite you to the podium.
Good evening, I'm Bill Corsulius. I'm one of the attorneys representing the applicant. Ms. Ellen Smith, who you're familiar with, will address you in a few minutes with some specific comments about the conditions as proposed. Basically, with a couple of exceptions, the applicant is in agreement with the conditions as set forth by Ms. McDonald. There are a couple of comments which Ms. Smith will make. I just want to make a general comment that these conditions are the product of a professional staff recommendation of an exchange of information at prior hearings where the public has participated, meetings with several council people and the staff, an additional exchange of information and positions and documentation via email, and with only a couple of exceptions, which Ms. Smith will go into, represent a fair resolution that will put an end to what has been sort of a nasty piece of business among neighbors. And unfortunately, there's not a decision you can make tonight that's going to satisfy everybody in this room, and you're used to that. But what you can do is resolve this by accepting a reasonable set of conditions that are agreeable to the applicant and are suggested by staff if you are going to approve this application. And that will allow everybody to go forward and perhaps then be better neighbors with each other. Now that people have had a chance to be heard, concerns have been aired and heard. Ms. Jackson is aware of that. Their surrounding property owners are aware of the difficulties she has trying to run her businesses that she's had for a long time. So we're going to ask the council tonight to approve this application with the conditions as proposed, with the exception of a couple of items, I think pertaining to parking and hours, as will be discussed by Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, if you please call the next speaker.
Ms. Ellen Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I apologize, I didn't turn in a public speaker card because I presumed public comment was over after our very late night a couple weeks ago. But first, thank you. I know you have put a lot of time and effort into this, and I hope you can appreciate the applicant has as well. It's near and dear to her heart. And as Bill mentioned, these conditions that have been proposed and read into the record are acceptable, with a couple of notable suggestions, which I've emailed you all about. But I also just want to remind you that if you looked at your ordinance and you looked at the agricultural related activities code section, that there are a number of things that the applicant had already agreed to limit based on your code. So in addition, and what Robin has read into the record, there are significant greater limitations on this use permit, which I believe is the first one that the city will be issuing in this category, notwithstanding it being part of your ordinance for many years. But there are age limits, hours of operation, sound limitations, the list of activities, number of attendees, number of parking spaces. Those things already were proposed by the applicant that were not part of your code. If someone just came in and applied for rural activities, rural, I'm missing this one with the next one, agricultural related activities, they could apply for hours of operation under the code from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. with sound levels much greater than what's been proposed and much greater than what the applicant has agreed to. With respect, I emailed you a couple of comments. Ours remain with respect to, and I'm going to read it just because I have it in front of me, 3A Romanet 2. So this is the hours of operation Thursday through Sunday. We had proposed 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. With the deletion of the phrase after that that says, but must conclude prior to the opening of the wine tasting room. And we also respectfully request, with respect to the concurrent variances, that you allow existing parking spaces. What has been proposed by staff includes a number of parking spaces, but it excludes 6 parking spaces that are currently on the site plan that are present and that do provide parking for stables and everything else. So the list, and I don't have Robin's, actually I do, in front of me, in concurrent variance where it says A, allow existing parking areas to only include, she's listed 3 handicap spaces, the row of 8 parking spaces adjacent to Bethany Way, and the row of 13 parking spaces along the northern property line. Those are the closest with respect to property line.
And I can go to the site plan.
Okay, sure. Oh, it's on. Kind of hard to see, admittedly.
Current, yeah. Here, so you can move it around.
So I'll just move the cursor. So there are 8 parking spaces here. Those are the ones that are in the condition. closest to Bethany Way. Then there are 13 along this property line. Those are also in the condition. There are 6 right here that currently exist that are excluded from the proposed variance approval. So I think it doesn't quite make sense to leave some that are closer to the property lines than others, but I just raise it for your consideration. We appreciate all that you have done with respect to these and ask for your approval with these changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, please call the next speaker.
I'd like to invite Casey Sturm to the podium, please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Casey Sturm. I'm with the law firm Weissman. That's 3500 Lenox Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30326. As you know by now, I represent Joseph and Erin Knaus, who own and reside on property that's catacorneal to the Painted Horse Winery. Their quiet enjoyment has been disrupted and turned upside down by operations and uses on this farm property. They have put their life on hold over the course of the past year and a half, choosing to withhold from making improvements on their property, having to withhold from important family decisions, and having to withhold from home improvement projects, all because an adjacent property owner is using her property in a manner she believes she's entitled to use it, but which does not comply with the city ordinances and requirements, and which constitutes a nuisance. And we have asked and requested that this body help us ensure that in the exercise of your authority, that you are not putting one use above and beyond the uses of the community in the area, or above and beyond the use of my client's property, which they have a right to use and enjoy, and that is being disturbed. There are a few things that I want to say. I want to echo Mr. Garrett's comments. I've said this to you all before. I commend your efforts. This has been a tough issue. My clients certainly understand that. We do want to make sure, though, that you, in rendering a decision, are taking into account the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and not just one business owner who wants to run an operation, and that you're taking into account the agricultural community here, and that you make the right decision, a fair decision that doesn't put one use above everybody else's use. I am operating a little bit on the fly here because I am not privy to all the conditions that have been going back and forth between the city and the applicant. I did hear Mr. Crisales say that she is running a business, and that is what we have been saying, that this is a business. That is not what she's indicated. For example, you heard about taxes earlier tonight. That's not what she's indicated when she's applied for tax relief. She has said, I have no business on this property. That is a concern to us. This is a business operation. And with that, it is important to recognize that as a property owner, you are not entitled to maximize your profitability when it interferes with the uses of adjacent property owners. So again, we would ask you to take that into account, particularly when we have great concerns that there's been less than transparency in what's been happening on that property. With regard to the conditions, I disagree with a statement by Ms. Smith. Your code gives you every right to put limitations and conditions above and beyond what's in there. In fact, it says that, and it says it based on the particular use of the property and on the particular property itself. So it's a fact-dependent determination that you are more than entitled to be able to make. With that regard, I say to the conditions on time, we're talking about agricultural related activities. It seems even the proposed times that are listed in the conditions are a little bit excessive. For example, we know that most children's parties are not happening at 8 p.m. at night. So we would ask this body to keep that in mind as you look at the time limitations. And we certainly feel that a limitation that ensures that children activities are not happening while wine is being consumed in a tasting room is more than reasonable. That being said, I also want to say that with regard to the current variances, and you all did receive some comments, general comments from me previously, I think it's really important that to the extent this body is looking at approving any variances, that those variances are very narrowly tailored to the activities being requested, so that we have no concern that they are going to be used for something that is unintended by this body. I also want to state that there has been a site plan that has been
36
put into
seconds
the
remains.
record. Thank you. And that site plan on it, at least the area that I see, shows a stage on it. It shows some other buildings. When we look at variances, when we look at site plans, we make sure we're not approving or giving the applicant the authority to do something that's unintended. And here I'd say variance should not be granted where they are going to cause or contribute to the nuisance already complained of. I recognize that my time is short and I'm operating on the fly. We greatly appreciate your time, your interest, your willingness to listen. We ask that you do the right thing here and ensure the protection of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would ask 1 minute. I like Ms. Smith.
Excuse me. Would you mind name and address for the record, please?
I'm sorry. Joseph Canals, 800 Cooper Sandy Cove, Alpharetta, Georgia. Changing into Milton because I'm technically in Milton. 1 minute. You referenced that this is a nasty business. It's nasty for us who live there that we have to come here and get involved in a fight with our neighbor. I was at Mass today. I go to St. Bridget's and I'm trying to say, be at peace. You guys do this all the time. But then I'm compelled to say that in the interest of fairness, I need to point out that we are trying to talk about a permit with an applicant who's operating without a permit, without regard for a permit. And quite frankly, I don't trust her, even if she's given a permit to do this, not to come back in 6 months and say, I want to do this. To build on her site without a permit and then come back and ask for a use of that site. Since we can't talk about it, or we might not have a chance to talk about it. I don't know if she's grown grapes. I don't know if she has a winemaker, but she's not a winery. And for some reason, that seems to be an issue that we don't want to touch because we believe she's granted certain ag uses. My attorneys pointed out to me and trying to communicate to you, you still have that ability to restrict what she can do. In regards to the safety of the public and my children who will be driving very soon, I got 2 that are already driving. I think even granting the variances where she doesn't have to move the parking back creates even more public danger because she's not going to slow down her business. She's going to get a permit to do this, and then she's going to try and do that. And then we have to complain. My attorney says, oh, we'll have to be more vigilant. I don't want to be vigilant. I want to be up here complaining about something and taking pictures and writing letters and calling the police. It's been going on a long time. I'm willing to spend a lot of money. I put off literally $500,000 in improvement in my home, okay? And I would like for you to make the right decision. We live in a residential area. You should not be running a business out of that. I say that respectfully, and thank you for your time.
I'm going to say, procedural, if you'd please fill out a comment card.
Filled out a comment card.
Okay,
You're
I'm
next.
sure you'll be called.
You're next.
Yeah, that'd be in order.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add for the city council that I think it would probably be important that to the extent this council body is hearing these applications piecemeal and one is being withdrawn, it's probably important for folks to understand how this body intends to address some of the concerns regarding the winery and what process and procedure may appear before this community under that sort of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kathy Cobb. We invite you to the podium.
Hey, how you doing? Joe, how you doing? I just want to tell you, since this lady has started up this business over here, my property's been vandalized. I've been assaulted. My
So, excuse me,
13-year-old
did-
granddaughter's been
Did you
assaulted.
state your name and address for the record?
Kathy Cobb, 13940 Hopewell Road.
Okay.
You've been there. And
Procedure.
And the thing is that People that's supposed to be parking over her house are coming to my house, thinking it's supposed to be parking at my house, and I'm having to call these guys out several times because I've been vandalized. My trailer's been stolen, my tags have been stolen, my granddaughter's been cyber threatened. There's racing up and down the street. She's going with this music all night long till 12 o'clock midnight. My son's dead, was killed in Alpharetta for drugs and alcohol, and I certainly don't want to see it happen to my granddaughter. I'm a mother of a dead son. I got a real terrible thing to endure the rest of my life. But I certainly don't want to see anybody going out. Her horses are starving. There's 4 or 5 stalls over there with about 20 horses that are starving. I've had to let clients go to her place, and they come back crying because their horses starved. It's not right. She's not conducting an agricultural business over there. She's drinking over there and letting people drive drunk with their kids. And I'm having to reap the benefits of people stepping on my property. SWAT team had to come out to my property about 2 weeks ago. You can confirm that with the city of Milton. And I'm going to sell out I'm going to sell out. And I'm going to bring all my friends, because it's not right that we have to stand up here and fight and go into something like this with her. She don't even know how to ride a horse. She wouldn't know how to ride a horse if you put one right here in front of her, she couldn't get on it. A bunch of kids run that facility. I've been over there. Her kid rode with me for 10 years on my drill team. It's just wrong. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy?
That concludes the comment cards that I have.
All right, that'll conclude public comment. So I'll open back up to council for discussion and any questions for staff or the applicant.
I just have a question on the parking spaces.
Okay, go
Hey,
ahead.
Robin, can you pull that map back up? Yep. I just want to make sure we're right on that.
Yep.
So where are those 6 spaces again that we're
Right
having
here, so
conflicting?
here, these 6 that are between the 2 riding areas that are highlighted in blue, right here where my cursor is.
Okay. And those have been there prior for the last,
According to the site plan, they're existing.
okay.
Okay. Paul?
Question, Robin, while you're at the podium. So those, in the consideration that we were giving to the existing parking spaces, it's the site plan that we have is also showing existing parking spaces in the arena for other events. Those spaces are not under consideration. It's only the 8 on Bethany Way.
Right.
It's the 3 handicap parking spots close to the
Right here.
residential structure, the 13 that are in the depths of the property. And now we're being asked to consider the additional 6 in between the riding rings, but
Correct,
not
yes.
anything else that's depicted on this.
Right, currently, just as you stated, the 13 plus the 8, 13 plus the 8 plus the 3 handicapped right here, it's kind of almost very close to the 100-foot.
But just to clarify, parking would not be permitted in the riding arenas at any time.
Correct. Yes, that was on the site plan. It talks about proposed parking for the special event permit, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Laura, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that we're considering, and this isn't for you, Robin, just a general statement. Tonight, we're looking at a special use permit for agricultural activities and separately from anything else. So I would first like to thank and give my appreciation for the consideration of the withdrawal of the rural event facility. Our struggle as council has been with the intensity of use on this land. So as we look at that, staff has recommended denial based on that intensity. But I believe this council want to support your agricultural activities. We have heard that from the neighbors, and we want to move forward with this. After our last meeting, I got swift feedback as we conflated the two uses, the winery and the agricultural activities. And that feedback was, you know what, we want a winery with a tasting room, which is in line with the nature and intent of what we heard on May 6th of 2019. That is what this community wants to support. And so I go from that desire of your neighbors, and this, for me, the legitimate use of a winery and a tasting room. And so for that purpose, when I consider the agricultural activity, the concurrent uses are not something that I can support. It's an either or. You can do this activity, you can have children's birthday parties and educational events, or you can have your winery, the tasting room where you're consuming alcohol open. And you have the flexibility to determine when that is. But I will say that as we look, and Councilmember Longoria, you had a great, suggestion on our alcohol ordinance and how we need to look at that as it relates to a farm winery. And I support that consideration. An alcohol permit is a privilege, and it's updated every year. And we often get feedback on things that are occurring in our establishments that serve alcohol, that we relook at that ordinance. And it's my understanding that is within our purview as a council. So for me, the agricultural activities can take place, but not at the same time that the winery's open. And I understood and understand your need for the parking spaces. We want to support your equestrian patrons and the agricultural activity patrons, and understand that the parking for that is close to your barn, is close to your riding arena. And that is the reason that I can support variances that I often don't support. Those are my comments as they relate to the updated conditions from staff, which greatly appreciate you looking at all of the input that we received at the last hearing.
Yep.
Yeah, so Robin, can you pull up the approved concurrent variances? So the language that if we approved it, what it would look like, what we're actually approving? So the first one describes a bunch of parking spaces. I'm guessing some of these parking spaces were made to be parking spaces, or all of these parking spaces sort of existing on permeable surfaces that actually could be something else if they didn't have a car on them.
To be honest, I haven't seen the parking spaces, so I can't speak to whether they could be something else. You would have to ask the applicant that. I haven't been on the premises to understand.
Oh,
what
okay.
they
So
exactly-
I was thinking these weren't like paved parking spaces
I
with
believe
stripes.
I do believe that they're gravel, except for the handicap spaces. So yes, I guess it could just be blank. It's not a concrete or paved over with striping and with curb stops.
Right.
I believe it's just gravel.
Okay. And the ones that are listed in item A, they exist already,
Correct.
right? So what we would be approving is something that exists now. So we wouldn't be saying we're giving you permission to do something else. This is just what's already there.
Correct.
Okay. On item B, in terms of the existing structures being located within 100 feet of the property line, those structures exist already today, don't they?
They do, and specifically the ordinance or the variance calls out structures housing animals. And then we also included agricultural equipment, feed, or related store items to be located within the 100-foot of the property line. So.
Okay, so my point again is that we're not giving them permission to erect something within 100 feet of the property line. These are things that already exist today.
Correct.
Okay. So, thank you. The challenge that we have with this is exactly how Laura stated, and that is intensity of use. And we've got to figure out a way of managing the intensity of use. The people that both own the property and the people that neighbor the property have been in existence for a while. The folks that are neighbors have a certain expectation and grew accustomed to a certain amount of behavior that was being exhibited by the property over the past 20, 30 years. I don't know however long they've lived there. The property owners also say that they've been doing certain activities for that period of time as well. Now, there is a new thing to the mix, and that's the farm winery, because the farm winery hasn't always been there. They may have been growing grapes, but they didn't operate as a farm winery, because that was something that she came forward to the council with a couple of years back and asked us about. So the reality is, how do we, and I think it was well said by Councilmember Bentley, is that how do we manage these intensities concurrently? Because to me, it doesn't really matter what businesses are operating. If there are only 3 people on the property, nobody's going to complain. It's when there's 250 people on the property that we're causing difficulty. And at that point, it doesn't matter if the 250 people are all there for the winery, or if 50 of them are there for the winery and 200 of them are there for a party, a child's party. None of that matters. What matters is that the collective amount of folks that are gathered on the property has crossed a critical point, and it's causing difficulty. It's causing people to park in neighbors' yards. It's causing people to create noise that exceeds certain boundaries and certain levels, so that it interrupts the peaceful use of people's property that live nearby. It causes difficulty. So the challenge that we've got is to control the intensity of use, to control the number of people that can be on that property at any given time. And so I'm interested to hear what we're going to propose. And I think as long as we solve the attendance issue, then we can solve the noise issue, and we can solve the parking issue, and we can solve the intensity of use.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, I think, Laura, you stated it pretty well. I think council is pretty unified in saying we want to, in fact, approve the business that you've had that's been going on the property with equestrian, including the birthday parties with the exceptions that we actually, or the parameters that we put into the agreement. So I think what I'm hearing is we're in support of that. I think we're also in support of granting the variances, like Joe was elaborating, that those buildings and those parking spots are already there, and they were being used before the winery came into existence. The question I've got, Robin, is, do we know, are those 6 spaces that we're talking, do those actually, have we seen those? Because I know we haven't, that's not in this agreement right now.
Correct, that's not, and I have a blow up if you'd like to have a little more bigger picture of exactly the parking spaces that Ms. Smith is talking about. I can put it back up.
Is it actually like a GIS, a picture that
Well,
will show?
it's a much clearer site plan. It's the same site plan, but it's magnified so you can see easier. So I'll be happy to throw it up on the.
Okay, so the only thing that's not in our approved concurrent variance for the parking are those 6 spots, which Ms. Smith was saying are within that 100 feet and they already are existing. Because I won't speak for everybody else, but I think that if that's verifiable, I think that was something we were all saying. We're okay if it was something that was already there within that 100-foot activity area as it applies to her equestrian use. I don't know
Correct.
how
So
we-
it appear there's 5, 1, 2, 3, about 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spaces that encroach currently into that
The
100
100-footer.
foot.
Okay. I guess we can talk about that when we get to a motion. The question I've got also is when we're saying that we accept this site plan, the concern I've got is we're showing a building on there for a wine tasting room of like 8,700 square feet. Our intent is not to approve that when we're not approving that when we approve the site plan as laid out.
That is correct. And I believe Ms. Smith pointed out the last hearing that that was just to be able, and she can, anyway, the intention was just to give an idea of what was the plans for the entire property, not necessarily that this, you would be
Approving that location.
approving
and
that location or size.
Okay, that's just, I want to make sure if we, as this is written, I don't want to have us approve something without knowing that, or inadvertently thinking that it included those things. I want to make sure that we're in fact protected, so that's a separate consideration.
Correct.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to point out, with all due respect, Councilmember Longoria and Councilmember Maury, that just suggesting that these things already existed, that it's okay, it's not. That's why they had to ask for a variance. So the applicant's attorney has gone on record to suggest that they have a difference of opinion than our city attorney, which is that this use or this variance is required because it was not approved to have these parking spaces and some of these uses in the 100-foot setback when it was Fulton County. So she was operating inappropriately then, and she was not abiding by our ordinance either, which restricts the parking and other uses in a 100-foot setback. So it's not just that it's there, that it's okay. If we had discovered that there was a crack house in there and had been there for a long time, that's not okay.
If I could let me restate. I was not saying anything that's out there is okay. I think what I was saying is, as we've considered and gone through this, the things that were related to our existing business that have been going on, and we heard from the neighbors that they didn't have a problem with that. The only way to bring that into compliance is to grant these variants if we choose to do that.
Right, and that's an important differentiation. We've accepted some of these conditions because we are trying to support the agricultural use, which I'm in favor of. I said that loud and clear at the last hearing. I'll say it loud and clear again tonight, that the variances that are requested are not inconsistent with the kinds of things that I would like to ensure can happen. I'm not trying to diminish her ability to operate her equestrian and agricultural activities. And as such, it might very well be appropriate for us to cast a vote in favor of supporting that tonight. That's probably where my vote will go. But I want to make sure that we understand that the variance is required because it's necessary.
Well, what I would say is that we need to approve this or disapprove it. It's required, as you suggested, because of what's being asked. If there was nothing being asked, there was nothing that we had to vote on or pass. The point I was making is the buildings are already within the 100-foot setback of the property line. If we don't approve that, okay, what is she going to do? Move the buildings?
That's what will be required. I'm not
No,
suggesting.
no,
I'm not
she
suggesting.
can't do that is the problem.
Well,
They've been there.
Okay,
So
I
I wasn't trying to get into debate.
No,
I
I'm not trying-
apologize for that.
Yeah.
My point was, I'm aware that we need, that not all behavior, should just be agreed to because it's been done in the past. That's not my point. My point was to recognize that we weren't giving permission for something new to occur, is that these things were already in place. These things were already part of the landscape.
And Robin, the activity setback is a function of the use permit.
That is correct.
So
Yes.
the parking spaces that were already there for the equestrian activity and the operation were not in violation, because we are now putting the activity setback in place with the use permit. And that is my reasoning for be able to allow those parking spaces in support of the ag activities to continue. They were there and they are
Yeah.
part of it. So
Understood.
Okay, Paul?
Just to continue the thought of where I was going, I want to make sure that we're careful with what we're talking about approving with the request for the additional 6 that are being depicted on here that were not a part of staff's recommendation. I just want to clarify, Robin, in the additional 6 that are within the 100-foot, it's being depicted as 10 total on here. So the other 4 don't require our permission in the granting of the variance because they're already there and they're outside of the 100-foot buffer.
That is
So-
correct. Yeah.
Okay, so just food for thought as we're making measure of this. We're talking about agricultural use for parties with smaller numbers that they're depicting now. 13 plus 10 is 23, plus 8 is what, 40, 42, 41, plus the other 3 is about 45 parking spaces for children's parties that are supposed to be pretty small in number. We're dangerously close to bumping up against intensity of use again. I just caution as we look at this that we're not overlooking something that the neighbors, we're not offering up parking spaces to take it to a more intense use than we intended.
I have a comment on that. I think it's a great point. I also recognize the Riding Academy that is, I took a lot of time to read Ms. Smith's inventory of the activities on the property, and they have a very healthy riding academy, which is a by right use. And so I'm guessing that those parking spaces are likely part of that essential by right use that we are trying to support, along with the additional intensity associated with the ag activities. And I think that should be ample parking, the parking spots that are on the ground. And I just want to be real clear that with the activity setback, that takes out of, I can't imagine that anyone would want to park on the Hopewell Road, where we see parking sometimes with some of your events. That it would be in the activity setback.
So I can just comment that anything, in the future, let's say, if some parking starts to occur along Hopewell Road within that 100-foot, then that is out of compliance if you all end up approving this use permit. And so it does not allow them to park anywhere within the 100-foot setback activity area. It's only whatever you all will end up, if you do approve for the variance. So.
Paul and Carol?
But Robin, it looks like the applicant is attempting to change the behavior from whether it's the event attendees or the riding academy attendees, because they've now put barrels in the area that was in contest where we had a disagreement about whether they were parking there or not parking there. The applicant has put barrels there now, so parking isn't taking place on the Hopewell area, but I'm glad to see that because it's consistent with what we're suggesting here. That's in the 100-foot setback. It shouldn't be a parking area. It shouldn't have been before. They're now taking action to prohibit that. I'll just add one more comment for consideration, and that is when we walked the property with the applicant the other day, we walked in a gravelled area, I guess I would call it on the southern end of the property, where there was, and on this particular site plan, there's the proposed future tasting room, an 8,000 square foot tasting room. I know that's not up for consideration tonight, but the reason I bring it up is because that area is gravelled as well, and it's depicting about another 30 plus parking spaces over there. So whether this additional 6 come into play or not that are in the setback, there is 30 plus more spots on the property. I don't know that it's a hardship that is necessary to be granted tonight. There's some benevolence coming forward in the fact that we're looking at the 13 plus the 8 plus the 3 when there are so many other parking spots already on the property.
Carol?
Thank you. I can appreciate that some might think that as we go back and forth on some of these details that we are talking about which paper towels to buy when there's a flood. And I understand that, but the devil is often in these details. And as council said earlier, it is all about unintended consequences, and that's why we're here based on promises that were made to us in May 6th of 2019. So while I think it is important that we get these details correct, I do want to redirect my position back to I am absolutely against concurrent uses because what happens on the ag side will drift over to the tasting room and purchase of alcohol, and that is completely unacceptable. Our attempts tonight to manage that or pursue changes to the alcohol permit, I am wholly in favor of those actions. So it is about intensity of use. It is about relief. It is about no more unintended consequences. And that's my position. It hasn't changed and it won't change.
Okay. Rick and then Peyton.
Just a question, Robin. Is there a reason we excluded the 6 spaces that her attorney brought forward within the 100-foot?
I think we were, as a staff person, I was just more concerned about the impact adjacent to the property owner on the corner, as well as the parking spaces that were along Bethany. They were encroaching the most, and that's kind of where my attention got to, was to those that impacted it the most into the 100-foot setback.
Okay, Peyton?
That was my exact question, but I guess my only point is, maybe the Paul is, it seems to me that it was probably an oversight because these 6, I mean, in my opinion, don't have near as an impact as the other ones that are on, that we're approving, or that's on the variance. So I mean, that was my exact question, so.
Okay. Paul?
I just offer up again my concern for safety. We're talking about vehicles and horses being intermingled, and I think that if you stay tight to the property line, you diminish that, especially when there are other spaces that are within her approved use already. I don't think that 6 is going to make any difference to her ability to operate the business or not. And I think we should not amend staff's recommendation to include those. I'd also like to go on the record, as some of the others have, that I am profoundly in opposition to operating any of the winery events concurrent with the agricultural events. I think it's absolutely important that we separate those two. And I also look forward to the appropriate review of our alcohol ordinance to ensure that we shore up the things that are producing some of the other concerns and nuisances for the community, and look forward to a rapid engagement on that. We know we've got time is short to accomplish that, and I absolutely would look forward to being achieved in the next 30 days, 45 days tops if possible. Encourage staff at Steve's, your direction, Steve, to move swiftly on that.
Okay. Joe, did you have something?
Yeah. Robin, so is there something in the language that we're looking to approve that addresses the decibel level at the fence line?
Yes, it is back
45.
on, I think you all have a copy. It would be condition 3C, which is at the top of page 2. Maximum sound of all music shall not exceed 45 dBA measured at the property lines.
How does that align with what's happening for the other parts of the business? I'd say the winery business, or are we including this use in the same category as any other music use on the property?
I mean, I think we were thinking that, if there were birthday parties that had music, whether it was taped or live, so it would be in association with this use permit.
Right. It's got to be, it's going to be music generated
For this
from the uses under the permit.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Laura?
Just, I'm wondering if we're ready for a motion.
And that's fine. I want to just clarify something though, because I know some of these conditions and some council members that had the meetings and whatnot with the applicants, but obviously they were, in all fairness, given to the applicant tonight. So I just want to be clear on where the council is and where the applicant is. So if they're not in line with a couple issues, at least everybody knows it before they vote on it, and the applicant knows. So it sounds like the two issues were parking and then or combining the two uses, agricultural and the winery business, correct?
That's how I understood the applicant's attorney's concerns were those two, the parking and the.
And I'll be glad to, I'll ask the applicant if
and
the
the
applicant
concurrent
wants to
uses.
step forward to just clarify that. And to the public, I just feel obligated that sometimes as the council's making recommendations, voting on something, I want to make sure that at least the applicant, whether they agree or disagree, they know, everybody knows what. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the parking, and the only point with respect to the parking is, I didn't know if it was an oversight to leave out 6 if you were granting a variance with respect to the other. The concern with respect to blending of uses is just in 3A2, which is hours of operation that have to conclude prior to operation of the tasting room. Understand the council's position that with respect, limiting the number of attendees for the agricultural related activities, which was one of the concerns, providing for parking, and otherwise limiting what happens. With respect, we think that having a conclusion that these conditions were intended to separate out winery operations and have agricultural related activities be considered on their own. And I understand the certain position with respect to safety. With respect to that, I'll say there hasn't been an issue with respect to safety. I respect the position that we've been told, but you also are approving a use permit that runs with the land that is for agricultural related activities. There could be a winery, there could not be a winery on this property in the future. There could be a tasting room or not, subject to what this council decides and renews with respect to business licenses. So with that, respectfully, I would say that including a but must conclude prior to the opening of the wine tasting room is an inappropriate condition for agriculture-related activities.
All right. Either if there's any other comments or questions, or I will open up for motions to consider.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve U21-01 with the removal from the site plan of the 8,000 square foot building and with staff's recommended conditions as of today, with the staff recommended limited or variances with the addition of the 6 parking spaces. And so that is VC 21-03.
Second.
With the addition of the 6 parking spaces.
You have a motion second. I just have a point of order. I'm going to ask Donald, do you understand
I
as
do,
far
and
as the addition?
yes, what I plan to state is, let me read what I would, allow the existing parking areas to only include the 3 existing handicap spaces, the row of 8 parking spaces adjacent to Bethany Way, and the row of 13 parking spaces along the north property line, and the 6 parking spaces located between the 2 riding arenas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to withdraw my
Oh.
second because I thought you were done. You might still be articulating things.
Nope,
That was it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I
Never-
just want to clarify so there's
Just you
no
just clarify.
question
So the
which 6 parking
No, I
spaces.
wanted to clarify that as well. I don't want to do this again, so I wanted to
Right.
clarify.
I agree.
Okay,
Second.
you have, sorry, I have a motion as read by Councilmember Bentley, a second from Councilmember Longoria. And just to clarify for mine, the 6, I could better term the 6 parking spaces we're talking about, you've included those to allow those, Laura?
In addition to the staff proposed, yes,
And you clarified on the
site plan,
removal of the,
the site plan, the
building.
8,000 square foot building.
Okay, all right. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe that was unanimous, Tammy. Let's see. All right, Tammy, if you will please call the next item.
Mayor, that item is consideration of U21-02 at 2105 Bethany Way, containing multiple parcels for a total of 18.07 acres by the PFAJ Revocable Trust dated 2/17/2019 to request a use permit for a rural event facility. Section 64-1842 is agenda item number 21161. It was first presented at the May 24th City Council meeting. It was deferred at the June 7th, 2021 council meeting, and then again deferred again at the July 19th, 2021 City Council meeting.
Okay, and just Ken, if I'd ask it, just to confirm typical procedure, the applicant would have a formal request to withdraw, correct?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. They have requested to withdraw this item in written form, which is exactly why during the call on the last item, we offered up that if you wanted to speak on the farm winery generally, that you would come to the public comment section. Given that there has been that request for withdrawal, the council has discretion. The council could hear the item, or the council has the authority to simply make a motion to approve the withdrawal, and that will be the end of this agenda.
Okay, I'll,
Mr. Mayor, we do have one public comment on this item.
okay, was this after the fact? I believe it's, okay. All right, in respect to the individual that's made the comment came in late, so didn't have the ability to hear the conversation. If the council's okay, I'll allow that public comment. You guys okay with that?
Thank you. I would like to call Ms. Ruth McElroy to the podium.
I couldn't quite get out in time, but I was here last time and I put it on this agenda item, so I didn't get to speak before you guys kind of went into it.
Do you mind just naming it just
Yeah,
for the
sorry,
record?
my name
just
is
so-
Ruth McElroy. I live at 645 Heron Run Court. I just want to speak in support of the farm and what they do. I actually am more here on the rural events use, which if you guys don't vote, I know this is a non-issue, but I appreciate you hearing me on this. I have, like I said, 2 small children. We go there often. We love going. We go with neighbors and friends and family. We consume alcohol and responsibly, and we drive home responsibly. And we really have appreciated the environment that they've created that's family friendly, gives an opportunity to meet with your community in a COVID friendly way, which I think is really unusual right now. And it does so while enjoying everything that Milton has to offer and enhancing it. It's a female family run business, and I really hope that there's a way that we can work through the neighbors' concerns, work through the congestion issues, safety issues, and all those things, and find a way for this business to thrive. It's one that I brought a bunch of women last time who couldn't come back, but really appreciate about it. And I know the intensity of use is the issue, and I get that. I think that's important. I really encourage you to think about what is the capacity that's causing the problem? Because as I listened for a while last time and watched previous recordings, we don't know what intensity of use level is causing the issue. Is it 40 cars? Is it 50 people? Is it 75? I would love to understand that, because when I go, it's not crazy crowded. It's very easy to get in and out. It's a very safe environment. I wouldn't take my kids if it wasn't. And so I feel like more data on that would be helpful. I realize I'm late to the game here, so it may not matter. And on a decibel level, I get the noise from the neighbors, but is 45 decibels going to get to the point where people don't complain? We haven't measured that. We don't know that. And so it feels respectfully a bit arbitrary that we're saying 45 is the right level, because we don't have any data to support that level. And so I just really encourage, from someone who goes, the flow of traffic works, and make sure we're consistent, because the parking, the intermingling of cars and equestrian use, if you go by every farm that I drive by between here and my house, every single one walks horses back and forth. And Carol, you probably know better, but that's a pretty common occurrence. I understand that the use of alcohol makes this more complicated, but let's be fair to them and the other farms in the area. And if we say that that's a problem, let's make that consistent for everyone, because I appreciate that that is a safety concern. Anyway, thank you. It's my first city council speaking, so I really appreciate you hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone that takes their time to come speak, no matter what their position. So, okay. So at this point, I'm going to recommend that we have the applicant formal offer to withdraw, and for Ken's legal advice, we can go ahead and just accept if someone has a motion, wants to make a motion to withdraw. That would be my recommendation.
Motion to accept the withdrawal would be in order.
So,
Mayor, I move that we accept the withdrawal of agenda item number 21-161.
Second.
okay, I have a motion to accept the withdrawal from Councilmember Longoria with a second from Councilmember Moore. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we don't have any staff reports tonight, and that will conclude our meeting unless there's anything that council wants to add or report on. Okay, I'll open up for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Boric with a second from Councilmember Jameson to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.